Welcome into the Sports Objective. Very special night, obviously Thursday night. Welcome in. If you're watching live on Facebook or on our YouTube channel, of course on Twitter as well. There are three different places you can do that. First of all, let's bring in the ladies' man, Kyle Barber. How are you, man?
What's going on, Dave? Sitting here drinking a beer and enjoying Thursday night as we get ready for a long weekend. At least I do.
All right. What's up, Bubba Rosenbaum?
What better place to do a baseball show than at the baseball field? Riley's classmates are playing a game, so I told him I'd bring him. So I'm looking forward to talking some East Carolina-Tulane baseball.
You have your back to the field. That's probably not good with a baseball that can ding you in the back of the head.
Showing off the swag from Ncaa.
There you go, pgxgloves.com. Absolutely. We're very excited to have a great show. Two great guests. And Bubba, our first one, it's been a while, but glad to have him back on.
Yeah, this guy's been making his rounds on the ECU circuit today, if you will. He was on Pirate Radio earlier. I'm glad to have JP Gooderham from the Fear the Wave blog and podcast. JP, welcome back.
Guys, good to be back. This is my conclusion of the ECU media circuit, but it's a huge series. I mean, to me, this is the series of the year potentially for both programs, at least as we get into the postseason. And I think we have some really interesting matchups coming up. So excited to be here to start to kind of chop it up.
No question. Coach
Kyle went on his... talked on Pirate Radio. Was it Clip?
Yeah, it was Tweet and Clip. So, which is always fun. He did not ask any sports trivia questions, which was a little disappointing, but always fun talking to him and appreciate him having me on.
Yep. No doubt. In fact, you're talking about a big series. This is really, this could be deciding the regular season championship in the American. First place, Tulane. Second place, East Carolina. Clark-LeClair is going to, as many fans as can get in will be there, including, I think, Bubba Rosenbaum will be there. Somehow, some way he'll be there in the jungle, or what do you think, Bubba?
I was going to go down tomorrow, but change of plans with the weather. It's looking like 80% chance of rain, so yeah. I'll be going down for the doubleheader on Saturday.
I was going to say the triple header.
Yeah, well, has first pitch been moved up or anything? Or
Yeah,
are they making adjustments yet?
First pitch tomorrow is at 12 instead of 1, and then on Saturday I think the doubleheader begins at 1, and then 45 minutes following.
To get that game in with the rain chances, I'd go and move the damn thing up to 11 a.m.
Have a breakfast with Kyle at 9 a.m. You can get a donut, coffee, and watch a baseball game.
All right, look, get the game in. When you got to get 4 games in, you need to get it in when you can get it in, because you're going to wind up putting yourself in a bad situation if you don't get that game in Friday, trying to play 2 doubleheaders in 2 days and Sunday being a travel day.
That would not be good at all. JP, let's talk about, obviously, we know Gavin Williams will get the ball for the first game on Friday. What about you guys?
Yeah, this is going to be, I think, probably the premier matchup of the series. On Friday, it's going to be Braden Oldhoff, who he's really the kind of superstar guy of the team, not just this year, but in the shortened season last year. California kid. He's made some national headlines, really primarily for just how good he is. Really challenging pitcher to hit against, has an insane amount of action on his ball. And I think another big thing is he shows up big in these moments. Probably the signature performance for him of his Tulane career was earlier this year. He goes on the road to a top 5 Mississippi State and really dominates that game, even gets into, and this is what kind of caught some headlines, gets into some discussions with the Mississippi State dugout where they accused him of using pine tar or something like that. The ump comes out and checks it, and he's clean. And he kind of points over to the dugout and says, "Hey, I'm good." And things got pretty testy after that. So, I think that this should be a pretty incredible matchup. And I said earlier today, I think this is one of the better matchups we're going to see in college baseball this weekend.
Accused of using pine tar. My goodness. You don't hear that's some 1980 stuff. That's some Kansas
George
City
Brett.
Royals, George Brett, Gaylord Perry, Dave, for your Williamston reference. Remember Gaylord, George Brett with the pine tar incident?
Hey, now, JP, as you take a look at Braden, I was looking at his bio. Obviously, the longer hair. I'm assuming he still has that longer hair. Is that correct? 6'4", 220 or 25 pounds.
Oh yeah, he came to Tulane like a clean cut kid, and I, somebody tweeted this week that now it looks like Tulane found a Yeti, shaved it, and taught it to pitch, and he's kind of got that kind of flow going on. But it is a sight to behold, and like I said, he has really saved his best for the big games, which is part of why I think we're really excited to see this matchup. He's a guy who delivers a lot of strikeouts. It is not rare to see him post 10, 11, 12 strikeouts in a game. And, that's the kind of performance that Tulane wants to get against ECU for out of Old Hoff, where you've got a lot of great hitting on this ECU team. And if he can come and kind of post one of his signature performances of the season, and especially if Tulane can get out of there with a first win, I think that would be a massive moment in the series just to start on a good note before that doubleheader on Saturday.
Hey, and guys, very quickly, I know you want to chime in, Dave, but if we were setting over under for runs and then hits for this one tomorrow at noon, what would it be? Maybe like 2.5 for runs and maybe 9.5 for hits. I think runs and hits are going to be hard to come by tomorrow.
Yeah, it's one of those things, though, Bubba. You've seen it a million times when you expect something in a matchup, and then it'll be a 10-12 ball game.
No doubt. Well, another thing, it might be ECU's advantage because the second game of the doubleheader last week was not good for ECU. So maybe it's so good that the game is being pushed back to Saturday. So at least you get the first game under your belt. But it's going to be, it's going to be a heavyweight fight, no doubt about it, tomorrow. And actually, for the whole series, I think it's going to be really tight. It's one of those series that you always say that it could go either way, but I think this is one that every single, and that's the one thing that you hear coaches say all the time, every single pitch matters. Well, if it's ever been, it's never been more true than this series. Every single pitch is going to matter in this series.
And along the lines of what you're saying, Dave, about anything wouldn't surprise. The only thing that would surprise me is if either team swept the other. If Tulane wins the series, or if the Pirates win the series, that really wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, and it's getting, the series is getting national attention. It's getting, ESPN did a little article on it, and it's one of the premier series in baseball this weekend throughout the nation with a top 10. I guess we're still top 10 in most polls, at least top 15. East Carolina team against the Tulane team that's been red hot here lately. So it's nice to get some national attention. You don't get the kind of buzz you do for football or basketball, but the college baseball world, as it is, will be paying attention to the game between the Green Wave and the Pirates this weekend.
Now, JP, you probably remember this. Were these comments made by Braden, or was it someone else? As far as this was in one of the New Orleans papers or media outlets, and just saying that a lot of folks are saying, "Will Tulane be able to beat ECU?" and it should be the other way around. Will ECU be able to beat Tulane? And you can't blame him for feeling that way. Because Tulane's in first place, and Tulane has obviously won a couple more games than the Pirates have in the league.
Yeah, I didn't see that comment from Braden specifically, but it's, I think one of the interesting things in the narrative of this season for Tulane is that ECU has been consistently a great team throughout this year, really from the get-go, especially when they've been at home. And so I think that you look at this series and right away for any team going to ECU and going to Greenville and trying to go 2-2 or trying to get a series win is a significant accomplishment by itself. But I think the other thing that maybe ECU fans who haven't looked much at Tulane's schedule would be surprised by is that while Tulane has now appeared in the top 25 in a couple of polls and things like that, D1 Baseball has Tulane as a last 5-in team. So they're on the bubble, but on the right side of the bubble right now. That was really preceded by a pretty tough start to the season.
Mm-hmm.
Tulane came out and there was a lot of expectations for this year. The Green Wave looked pretty good last year in a pandemic shortened season. And frankly, it started to feel like this was going to be a clunker of a season. I mentioned that, Tulane picks up one against Mississippi State. They lose back-to-back games to lose the series on walk-offs in the 9th, which was brutal. They get swept by Louisiana Tech, who's been a good team, but, again, just a huge blow. And they've lost some series against some schools like Grand Canyon. And I think if you went into the mind of a Tulane fan around March, I don't think there were a lot of people kind of saying, hey, I think this is a team that could go to ECU and pick up a couple of games or win the series or whatever it is. And the whole shape of this season has shifted radically by two things. One, the team has consistently had pretty good pitching. They've ranked in the top 20 in ERA for the NCAA. The hitting has really come online in a serious way. And the second, the byproduct of that is they just posted a 12-game winning streak. And so I think that you've got an ECU team that I think is genuinely, really solid and elite type team, and a Tulane team that's playing its hottest baseball. And so, I think it was Kyle who said that earlier, which is, I don't know what can really surprise you about a series like this. It would be surprising if one swept the other. I think it's going to be a really tough battle on both sides.
No question about it. When you're looking at this, could easily be a split, a 3-1. Either team could have a 3-1. Like we're talking about with the number of pitches. And let's talk. Speaking of pitching, what about the bullpen? Can you talk about that? How has that been this year for the Green Wave?
Yeah, and I think that for ECU fans who remember some of the Tulane teams the last few years, this has been more of the question mark. But I think this season it's actually been a real strength of the team. I mentioned that the staff ERA is like top 20. I think they're number 16 in the country right now. And a big reason for that is they've got some really, really good performances out of some of these guys in the bullpen. Keegan Gillis comes to mind. He has a 1.45 ERA. He's done a really nice job in 14 appearances so far this year. But we've seen a number of other guys who have done, a really solid job on the mound. Robert Price is another guy. And then some guys who, they've kind of jumped and shown something lately. Trent Johnson is an example who I think if you looked at his numbers right away, you wouldn't think, oh man, he's having an amazing season. But, we had a game against Houston that Tulane lost last week, and he had to come in and do 4 or 5 innings of work because the starter left early, and he was a guy who stepped up and could do it. So I think that there are a lot of positives that Tulane is kind of seeing with their bullpen right now. And I think that, that's going to be such a big storyline, in my opinion, as we look at this series, especially with this doubleheader on Saturday now.
No question about it. Last week, you guys you win the series 3 out of 4 against Houston. Unfortunately, the Pirates, that's what hurt the Pirates, not playing that series. I've been telling people basketball going like 20-some days without playing, and then you have a situation with the Pirates where they lose. They've actually lost, I believe, 2 series now on the year because of COVID. How has it been for the Green Wave as far as that COVID-19 is concerned?
Really across the board, looking, purely athletically, I think Tulane across all sports was in a pretty good position. I mean, in football and basketball, really until I think February, Tulane did not have any issues on the Tulane sideline. The men's basketball team, I should say, went through some issues, I think in February this year. But the baseball team has generally had a pretty good run so far. They did lose the USF series, which was supposed to happen. I think that was supposed to be played in Tampa. The team got there and, the flight is scheduled to come back on Sunday. So now you're stuck for a couple of days, but you think maybe that could hurt some momentum. But I think in Tulane's case, it actually, they come back and then they peeled off a bunch of those wins. So I would say that we've been pretty fortunate for the most part. And, a lot of credit is due, I think, to the athletic staff that, has done a really good job across the board. With a lot of these Tulane teams that, keeping everyone going and doing the best they can in a tough situation.
What do you think your baseball program will consider a victory this weekend? I mean, obviously, everybody wants to sweep, but to get a sweep on the road is against an East Carolina is not the easiest thing in the world to do. Would splitting it be considered a victory for you guys, or do you guys need to go 3-1?
I think you should be pretty happy with a split with where these teams are right now. I mean, Tulane has a benefit of, ECU split a couple series. And so I think that there's a big benefit here that Tulane's coming in with a 1.5 game lead. And I think that if you can leave this moment of the season and leave Greenville and go 2-2, where you still have a 1.5 game ahead, it doesn't seem like UCF or some of these teams behind are going to be able to make a charge. Who knows? Maybe they can. But it really feels like it's that 2-horse race. I would say if you can go into your biggest series of the year against a team that has been in the top 10, in a tough environment, and you can leave while you still control your own destiny, that's something to be very happy about. I think if you can win the series, if you think about this also from Tulane's perspective, which is that we're on the bubble, I mean, that would be a huge moment. It's going to be a tough task. And I think that's that's part of what makes this series so exciting.
Yeah, like
No.
you're saying, JP, with the Pirates having split 2 series already, if it is a split this weekend, obviously with Tulane maintaining that 1.5 game lead, that would put the Pirates in a situation where they would have to sweep one of their 2 remaining opponents on the road, either Cincinnati or USF, and go 7-1, and Tulane would have to drop 3 games.
Yeah, it gets harder. I mean, there's just not that many games left. And I think that, that's why I think, especially from ECU's perspective, I think getting those 3 wins this weekend or trying to sweep is pretty instrumental. And I think for Tulane, I think 2-2 puts you in pretty good shape. There's definitely some games left, and Tulane lost the game to Houston. It can happen. Sweeping teams is hard to do, especially playing these 4-game series. But yeah, I think that if whichever team leaves this weekend and feels like they're in the driver's seat, that's the team you want to be for sure.
Yeah, and you guys being on the bubble, 2 wins, certainly 3 wins, but even 2 wins would really boost your RPI, I would think.
Oh, it would be huge. I mean, Tulane's about number 70 in RPI. And if you look at the AAC, this is kind of a down year across the league. Usually we have, even with UConn not being part of it anymore, usually you have 2 or 3 teams who are going to be competitive for an at-large. And really, you've got Wichita, who's kind of been in the 60 to 70 range. You've got UCF, who's kind of hovered in the top 70 to 100. But then you have a bunch of teams at 100 or worse. There is not a lot of space for Tulane to really push the RPI. And that's why I think, a 1-3 kind of series for Tulane could be pretty damaging, because number one, you're not getting the RPI boost that you want. And then second, you're kind of losing some of that credibility that you're getting from all those wins. You don't want to leave that question of, hey, did Tulane beat up on some of the worst teams in the conference? And so I think that a good showing here, again, that 2-2 or better is kind of where I'm setting the benchmark of what success looks like for the Green Wave this weekend.
No doubt about it. In just a few minutes, we'll have Ben Upton from the 11.7 podcast. He's in the green room, so welcome in to Ben. We'll have him on in just a second. JP, let's actually talk some football. What about spring football for the Green Wave? I know we've been talking about baseball, the huge series, but what about Coach Fritz? What's going on there on the gridiron?
Well, Coach Fritz is still the coach, which is a good thing. So some people may be aware, but he was he basically, anytime there's a tough job in the P5 now, Coach Fritz's name is appearing on the list of people that, commentators and writers think that a school should go talk to. That was the case with Kansas, fortunately and unfortunately. But I think for Green Wave fans, we're excited to see that Fritz is going to be coming back for another season. I think kind of the big question mark, we were talking about this in the green room before, but Tulane will have a new offensive coordinator. Will Hall, who did a great job while he was in Uptown, is already headed to Southern Miss. He'll be the head coach for that program going forward. And his former college roommate, interestingly enough, Chip Long, former Notre Dame OC, is stepping in. And I think that, the thing that Tulane fans can be pretty excited about is that it feels like we have a really good quarterback in sophomore Michael Pratt. He had an outstanding freshman season, I think, and showed a lot of promise. I think the flip side is Tulane's got an opening schedule that I think has starts with Oklahoma at home and then goes into Ole Miss and UAB and some tough schools. And the AAC is never easy. So, it's the same story for all of these AAC schools. The wins are not easy in this league, and you got to keep getting better.
What did you guys have? What did you guys have coming back on defense? Did you have a lot of COVID seniors decide to return? How's that side of the ball looking? Your defensive line was stout last year.
Well, that's kind of the area that I think, Tulane, we just went through the NFL draft, obviously. Cam Sample, defensive end, goes in the 7th round, or goes in the 4th round. Patrick Johnson goes in the 7th. So anytime that you're an AAC school and you're sending 2 or 3 guys from the same unit to the draft, that is a big difference. And, I think that there are definitely, one positive is that Tulane did not have a lot of guys hit the transfer portal at positions of need, which, some schools did, and that's going to really radically change things. But I think, what we're going to do and what we're going to see on the defensive line is a big part of what we want to see these next couple of years. So I think the offense is, something that we're feeling pretty optimistic about with Michael Pratt. I think the defense has some work to do with making some replacements, and they also have a new defensive coordinator. So there's going to be a couple changes this year.
Who's your new DC?
That is actually a former. He formerly was the cornerbacks coach at Tulane. Then he went to Duke, and now he's back. So some new talent coming in, and I think this is the first. Yeah, this is the first time since we got started that we've had, I think, two new coordinators coming in at the same time. So Fritz is managing some change, which is interesting, and so it'll be something to watch.
Yeah, and back-to-back years, Tulane comes to Greenville, just weird AAC scheduling without not having divisions anymore. So the Green Wave will be making a trip to Greenville for the second straight year, this time with fans there. And this is going to be just heads up to all Green Wave fans out there. I will guarantee you one thing: this is going to be the best Pirate football team you've seen since Ruffin McNeil was fired. Personified, guaranteed. Sign off on it.
Yes,
that's
Coach
good.
Houston is. Yeah, Coach Houston has been working hard with the depth, and we're getting more and more. Speaking of the transfer portal, I think that's actually benefited East Carolina this year.
It has
for football. It really, we're getting a lot of 3- and 4-star guys that normally we may not get, but that's actually benefited Houston, and we'll see how the Pirates do this fall. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I had a little bit of lag on my end. I thought you were finished, but before we let JP go, I wanted to just talk about that's quite a coup, getting Oklahoma to come to Ullman Stadium. Talk about that.
So that's pretty exciting, honestly. I think especially with Tulane announcing that we anticipate, or at least they're going to be selling season tickets with the expectation that the whole stadium is going to be open. That's a pretty awesome way to kick things off again. So that will be, I think, by far the biggest game Tulane's ever hosted at Ullman Stadium, and it's relatively short history. And yeah, I totally agree with you. There's a bunch of good games on the schedule this year, but I think that one, there's a pretty good chance that's going to set the attendance record. So that's a pretty awesome one. But Troy Dannon, our AD, I think has taken a strategy like some AAC schools have. I think USF has done a really good job of this. Is take some of those 2-for-1s where it makes sense for you and you feel confident you can get a high profile opponent coming into your stadium. I think for Tulane fans who are going to be there, that should be an exciting way to kick things off.
I got 2 words for you. It's easy to bring Oklahoma there. All you have to do is say Bourbon Street, and they're right there, man. New Orleans is such a great city. I mean, why wouldn't you go to New Orleans? I mean, it's great.
Oh, it's going to be, and that's, it's funny because people kind of, people who hadn't been there were saying stuff of, will Tulane move this to the Superdome? And I'm sure that was never an option. For ECU fans who have been to Ullman, it's not a big stadium, but it's right on campus. You get the tailgating experience. It's highly accessible to other parts of the city where you want to be. I think for not just the Oklahoma fans, but fans who travel, to go to Tulane games. It's definitely, I think, one of the more fun road trips. And, personally, I think it's the best road trip you can go to in conference. So
yeah,
I always recommend to people to go at least once.
Yeah. And for all the Oklahoma fans, if you've never been to New Orleans, if you're on Bourbon Street and anybody asks you, that they can tell you where you got your shoes, just keep walking.
This is some insider knowledge here that people should heed. Kyle, I'm hoping you didn't learn that one the hard way.
A friend of mine, I got a buddy, he's a Southern Miss guy. He's about 6'5", 300 pounds, and a guy hit him with that bet, and he fell for it. But like I said, my buddy's 6'5", 300 pounds, so he didn't have to pay up. they eventually somebody said, "Hey, leave that dude alone," and that's what they did. Well, they were harassing him for a minute. Yeah. And the gag is, guys, bet you I can tell you where you got your shoes, and you can't tell me where I got my shoes, and the answer is on your feet.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah. There you go. JP, tell everybody about your podcast and how people can listen to it, and certainly, I'm sure it's on a lot of different platforms.
Yeah. If anyone's looking to brush up on their Tulane or kind of get our perspective this weekend, check us out on Twitter. We're at Fear the Wave blog. You can look up our podcast, which is Fear the Wavecast. We've got a newsletter as well. We'll do a write-up after this weekend. But guys, really appreciate you having me on as always. Always enjoy it. Like I said, I think this is the premiere, maybe one of the premier college baseball series this weekend. So for those of you Actually, last question, but I know we're still doing restrictions. What's the attendance been like at ECU games so far this year?
Supposed to be 50%, but it's 50% with social distancing. We can get close to 5,000 in there for 100% capacity, so 50% should be around 2,500. But we're doing about 1,500 fans, and it's pretty consistent between 12 and 15 in there.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, well, we'll see how things turn out this weekend, and love to have you back on this summer to kind of preview football. It's hard to believe it'll be right around the corner, my friend.
Cool. See you, fellas. Appreciate it.
All right, see you, buddy. All right, bye-bye. All right, I appreciate JP there, and a guy that's hey, Bubba, here's another great guest, 11.7 podcast, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir.
I believe it was prior to last season, when everything got shut down after 15 to 20 games, depending on the team, that we had this guy on. We were talking about that earlier today, Dave, but welcome back in from the 11.7 podcast. Former Mercer Bear, Ben Upton. Ben, welcome back.
Appreciate it, guys. And I owe you guys an apology. I just went back and looked, and I had DMs from you guys on Twitter going way back. And so I have a small excuse, and I'm not a big excuse guy, but I don't get notifications for Twitter DMs. Like retweets, likes, and all that I get for some reason. I never get Twitter DM notifications. So I've actually had about 10 that I had to answer, and that was my fault. But I'm happy to be here. Good to be back. It's been a while.
I just figured 11.7 had gotten too big.
No. Still got a long ways to go there. But no, I'm pumped. And so I know the whole routine when you have podcast guests on is like you guys are going to hammer me with questions, right? But I actually would rather start off by asking you guys some questions, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
All right. So first question here. Do you guys remember back in 2017 when the Mercer Bears came up to ECU and swept you guys?
I do. I was there.
Yeah.
I was there.
I was there too. I'm just messing with you guys. It was the biggest, probably the biggest weekend in Mercer Bears history. So I just had to rub that in a little bit. But it was fun. It was a good time. You guys were great though. I mean, I think it was during spring break, so it wasn't quite the jungle out there, or maybe Mercer wasn't such a big draw. But I mean, the fans out there were awesome. It was a memorable experience to say the least. I loved it.
That was a very disappointing baseball season.
Yeah, it was. It really was. But no, so and then the second question I have, the birdhouse, the cone going viral. I mean, is that the greatest thing in college baseball or what?
No doubt about it. I mean,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, personality. I mean, with college baseball is so underrated, and it's nice to have something like that really kind of gets noticed, for a sport in a good way.
No, for sure. And I don't know if you guys saw this on my personal Twitter.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't mean to step on you there, but
you're good.
With the birdhouse at East Carolina and it going viral like it is, and kind of other teams kind of using it. It's a really smart move by our university, making T-shirts and hats and marketing and making extra money off of it.
No
the Pirate
doubt.
Club and all. It's really smart by them to
use
that in marketing.
Oh, that's sarcasm. They're not doing it. Oh,
no, that's absolute sarcasm.
Hey, but Pirate fans, we got you covered.
Indeed, it's coming, guys. It's coming.
Okay, well, I will definitely be purchasing a T-shirt, hat, whatever you guys have for it, because my high school, and I'm still pretty close with my high school coaches. I don't know if you guys saw my personal Twitter, but they just clinched a playoff spot, and I was on a walk-off double, and sure enough, a guy prints out from the dugout wearing a cone, and they got it from you guys at ECU. So tip the cap to you.
And Ben, tell them where your high school is located.
It's in Houston, Texas, so just north of Houston. Decent-sized high school. A lot of success, good baseball program year in and year out, but they're embracing the cone. They love it. So theirs is called Terry the Cone.
And for people that don't know, I'm sure if they're watching and listening to this podcast, they know why your podcast is named 11.7. But I know Coach Godwin hopes that your podcast will have to change because the number of scholarships, he was pretty adamant about that yesterday. That's one of the things I love about him. Not only is he a great coach for East Carolina, but he's a great ambassador, a great statesman for college baseball, in my opinion.
No doubt about it. And I got a chance to meet him a few years ago. Super down-to-earth guy. And yeah, like going back to the podcast name, our whole, like, I guess slogan or saying is like, let's grow the game so we can change our name. Like, we want to change the name from 11.7. I don't know if we ever will end up doing it, but no, that's what we're all here for. We're here to just make sure that the players out there, get a chance to be rewarded, not have to pay their way to play this great sport. So, but yeah, it's something that we hope gets changed maybe in the next 5-10 years or so, I would say at the earliest.
Yeah, like Dave said, Ben, Coach Godwin was asked that on, was it Tuesday, Dave?
Yeah, Tuesday.
When he met with the media, and Coach was just saying, he said, you think about it, and he broke it down a little bit. This year we have 40 guys on the roster. Normally it's 35, but you have, I'm trying to remember, he said probably, a very large percentage, probably 80 to 85% of the roster, if not more, is paying half their way.
Mm-hmm.
Or more than half the way. They're paying more money than East Carolina's paying.
I know, and it's kind of sickening just because, like, college is expensive. I mean, it's one of those things where it's not the 1980s or 1990s anymore where you can go and pay per semester. Like, it's tens of thousands of dollars at the cheapest. And so, I mean, it's a shame that, like, these guys go and put in the hours not only in the classroom but on the field, outside the field, like working out, and then they still have to pay 5 digits. I mean, it's just not worth it. But there's other people making those decisions, and like us little people can't do much about it until the bigger guys step up and change some ways.
And Ben, he also talked about the very fact of, at East Carolina with our baseball program, we usually at least break even or we're making a profit. Obviously not last year because of COVID, but I'm sure everybody was pretty much in the same boat there. But the fact of the matter is not being able to pay that extra assistant coach. I mean, he talked about that too. I mean, it's ridiculous. The third assistant.
Yeah, that's another thing that we stand on is, obviously scholarship limit, but the volunteer assistant. Some of the best coaches I've ever had, and I went to 3 different schools and actually played for 4 different volunteer assistants. And all of those guys were just hardworking, knew the game through and through, knew how to develop players, and the hours that they put in were unbelievable. But for 3 of those 4 guys, like, they were a volunteer assistant for 1 season, and then they had to go get a real job because they weren't getting an assistant job, and it just was time for them. Like, they couldn't go any further in their lives, really, not even just baseball career, but they had to start making some money. So what's cool to see is that finally we're starting to see some athletic directors step up and say, this needs to happen soon. We had the vote a couple years ago, which was tragic, that they voted it down across the boards. But I think go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to add to just the fact that they were making it optional. It wasn't a mandate that you had to pay the third assistant. That's what's crazy is they couldn't even vote to make it optional. That's crazy.
That should have been the answer. Like, if you want to pay it and you can afford to pay it, go ahead. Why not? But what happened was there was a little bit of, well, that's not fair. And then you have to pay softball and then this and that. And it was just driving me nuts because obviously baseball and softball get compared to each other because they're similar sports. But at the same time, softball has more scholarships than the baseball with less players. And most baseball programs make more money than the softball programs. And when you have a school like ECU or Mississippi State or really anybody in the SEC or ACC, Big 12, those schools profit off baseball. Most of them do, at least. And if they're going to make profit, you might as well disperse that back into the coaches that put the hours into it. And, if there's a mid-major program like Mercer who's told me that they can afford to pay that volunteer assistant, all Division I school like Mercer can do it. I'm sure there's, other schools that were smaller mid-majors that can do it. And it's now you're ripping money out of these hardworking coaches' pockets just because it's mandated that they can't be paid or go recruit. And it's just, that stuff will get me fired up, I'll tell you.
While there are some common, some parallels between baseball and softball, like we do, Ben, in baseball, you have 18 to 22 pitchers on a roster, and maybe more this year. But in softball, you're going to have 3 or 4, if that.
Yeah. No, I know. And that's the big thing is without pitching in college baseball, you're going to see like twice as many losses as wins. Like you need a staff of probably about 8 to 10 guys you can trust to go in and get outs at any moment. Obviously, you're going to have younger guys who aren't developed yet or guys that are injured. But between like injuries and like bullpen depth, that's something that baseball has to have that softball doesn't have to. You see the same pitchers, same 2 or 3 pitchers every week throwing, and like they don't need anybody else, and they don't get injured. Or for the most part, they don't get injured. But yeah, I mean, it's just like it's the parallels that people draw between baseball and softball, and it's a shame because it's similar sports, but they're not the same. And hopefully we'll get to the point. I think between the paying the volunteer assistant and raising the scholarship limit, though, I think the volunteer assistant comes way before the scholarship limit gets raised.
I'm kind of surprised with the way the quote unquote Power Five likes to monopolize things, and they have all the extra money and they have the anonymity to pass things without the other Division I schools, and knowing every Power Five conference just by virtue of their football TV contract have the money to pay volunteer assistants, to fund more scholarships. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't passed just because they see a competitive advantage there with them having the money to do so, and them thinking, well, maybe, I don't know, I'll throw Coastal Carolina out there. Maybe they won't be able to, and we'll be able to get more of the, more top players. I'm kind of surprised it just hasn't passed almost because of the greed of the Power Five. Maybe somebody should pitch it to them that way, and then we'll get the damn thing to pass. Exactly.
And that's what the Power Five wants. They want to be separated from the rest. And then it gets into the fact of like, now the SEC wants to separate from the ACC, and the ACC wants to separate from the Big 12. Like, it's all just like an arms race. And you see it, the best example of this in college baseball is you see the arms race with facilities now, whether it's upgrading the stadium or upgrading like an indoor facility like batting cage or locker rooms. Like, those are the type of videos that come out on college baseball that are like supposed to be like recruiting gold mines. Like, hey, come to our field. We just put in, $36 million worth of renovations, and, it's a good time out there. There's a student section, bring the whole family. There's other fun things to do, kind of like that minor league atmosphere. And like the mid-major programs, I mean, they can't compete with that. They don't have the football money to, spend in the athletic department like that. So, and it's funny because I always bring this up because I'm a big mid-major guy. The way the mid-major like athletic departments make money is by playing the Power Five schools in football. Like, yes. Mercer University has played Auburn, Alabama, a couple other, Vanderbilt, Memphis. Like, they get these like $400,000, $500,000 checks from these big Power Five schools to play football and get slaughtered 70-7. But like, that funds sports like baseball and softball and all these other sports across the athletic department. So it all just comes like pyramid down. We got the Power Five all the way down to the like the SWAC and the MEAC and those conferences.
No question about it. And that the very fact that we talk about all the time about Power Five and Group of Five, but the reality is, when you made a great point, the reality is the American, for example, we're doing exactly the same thing the quote unquote power leagues are doing. So that's what drives me crazy. It's not like Division 2 or 3 where, like, for example, you don't have scholarships, things like that we go, oh, well, that's why you're not that part of the Power Five. And that's why I get very frustrated. I know a lot of fans do that. Doing the same thing, you should be the same as that. We're Division 1.
Yeah, and I actually have a great question for you guys because 11.7, we do the mid-major power rankings, right? And we get chirped at more than anything because of the guidelines and like requirements we put on like what qualifies a mid-major for baseball. And so we have the American Conference as not a mid-major because we don't think it is at all. But we have all of these Conference USA and Sun Belt fans chirping at us saying, if you think Conference USA is a mid-major, like, you don't know college baseball. Or if you think the Sun Belt's a mid-major in college baseball, then you don't even know college baseball. Like, where do you guys draw the line between? Because I think like the American a step ahead, clearly above Conference USA, Sun Belt, the MAC, Mountain West, like those conferences. Like, where do you guys draw the line in baseball?
If you're talking in football and basketball, yeah. If you're talking in baseball, I would argue Conference USA and the Sun Belt as a whole this year anyway are better than the American.
Right. This year I think there's an exception, but you look at the American and like some of the teams that are usually up there, like the University of Houston's and UCF and Memphis, like some of those schools have had really good baseball programs in the past, and like this year they're just not very good.
Well, I mean, if you look at Conference USA, you got Rice, who used to be a power.
Yeah.
You got Southern Miss is always good. Florida Atlantic is typically pretty good. But both the Florida schools are typically pretty good. You got into this year, which is kind of unusual. Charlotte and Old Dominion are good.
Yeah, that's throwing everybody through a loop.
Yeah, and then of course the belt. Coastal Carolina won the national championship. Of course, they weren't even in the belt yet. But
they were Big South, I think, at the time, right?
Correct. Yeah, and then you got Louisiana Lafayette, South Alabama. So I mean, I don't know. I could see I could see them not wanting some. It's the whole. I think the reason it doesn't, Mercer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole mid-major, low major, you're used to the terminology. Whereas when you're a group of 5 fan, Sunbelt, American, Conference USA, you get sick of that label. You're always battling the Power 5. It's something you're always dealing with. And so in baseball, it's the one sport where Conference USA and the Sun Belt could stick out their chest a little bit and say, hey, we're on the same level with the SEC, ACC in this sport. We're a multi-bid league. We've won national championships, Rice, Coastal. And I think that's probably why it bothers them to be called mid-major, because that's the one sport where they can stick out their chest and say, in this sport, we're not group of 5 or mid-major. We're on level with the quote unquote power conferences. Whereas, if you're an FCS school in football, you're kind of used to that tag of mid-major, and it doesn't bother you as much.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like a topic that will like continue to be debated. Like we even thought about like the Big West with UC Irvine and Cal State Fullerton and Long Beach State and UC Santa Barbara. Like, are they considered mid-major? Because like if you think about it, like that's a baseball conference through and through.
Yeah.
They don't have football there. Like they don't not very much basketball going on in there either. Like they have teams, but like really sticks out. So like, is that considered like a power?
You could even
conference?
make the argument for the Missouri Valley at times.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
I mean, I don't.
Really,
don't know.
what I say is don't even use the term, because with Conference USA, like this year, you have Old Dominion, Charlotte. Let's see, who am I leaving out? Southern Miss is always strong.
La Tech.
La Tech's been as high as like the top 10 or 12 in the nation this year. So they've had at least 3, if not 4, top 25 teams at one point or another this season.
Yeah, and so the way that we like kind of defended ourselves, or like I guess drew the line this year, and obviously it's changed the last 2 seasons on like what we consider mid-major or not, because we think it's good to like get these schools some exposure. But where we drew the line was just like the conference as a whole. How much revenue does it bring in through all the sports? How much resources do they have? Do they have the ability to fly to games? Do they have the ability to go recruit across the nation? Because a lot of these schools, even in like Conference USA and the Sun Belt, like they're limited to recruiting, and they're limited to, they have to drive a bus 8 to 10 hours instead of flying. So that's where we did like the whole mid-major draw the line. It wasn't like a talent thing. It wasn't like a history in baseball, because if you look at it, like there's no reason why the Big Ten should be considered a power baseball conference, because it's not. So, and even like the Big 12 this year, like talent-wise, I don't think competes with like some of the baseball conferences like the Sun Belt and the Conference USAs and the Big West. Like you got teams like Kansas State, Kansas, West Virginia, even like Baylor's down this year. Oklahoma's not great. Like those schools, like talent-wise, who knows? They might be like on par with the mid-major programs out there. So it's just it's a mess.
I think the problem is I think what you're doing is you're meaning to give exposure to programs that maybe don't get exposure normally, and you mean it as a positive thing, but some people are offended by the term mid-major, and I think it's just a terminology thing, because like I said, I mean, Conference USA and the Sun Belt, I would definitely not consider them mid-major. And the only time I ever use the term I don't like the term, but the only time I ever use the term is in basketball.
Yeah.
But I mean, And somebody's cat is meowing in the background.
I think that might be my cat. Not a cat guy, but I have a cat. I mean,
okay.
I don't know. He'll shut up. He thinks he's a dog.
I know the feeling, Ben. I'm a dog guy as well, but we do have a cat that stays outside just because of my kids.
Yeah.
Tell him the story about your cat's name and why it has that name.
Yeah, and Ben will appreciate that because I know he remembers this guy because he's playing for the Pirates in 2017. So I took my son to a game. This was actually in 2018 against North Carolina in Chapel Hill, as well as the DBAP Durham Bulls Athletic Park. So that's when Dwanye Williams Sutton was playing. And Riley just thought that was the coolest name. So he said one day, he said, I'm going to name our dog Dwanye. So we got a cat before he got the dog. And so the cat's name is Dwanye.
Dwanye. That's incredible. That's one of the most clever dog names I've ever heard. That is funny.
No question about it. We actually had a comment from one of our probably our super fans, and that's Johnny Gardner. He said, "Did you have a teammate last name Cornell at Mercer, a pitcher?"
Yeah, we did, and he's doing something really cool right now. So that's Conrad Cornell. Him and I still talk pretty much like on a weekly basis. He actually came out with an app. It's a sports recruiting app called Press Sports, and it's very similar to like Instagram or TikTok, and it has coaches on there, and it's just a way for players at the high school level to get recruited just by posting like cool, like updated highlight film. And it's like very similar to Instagram and TikTok where you just scroll through videos, and it's like it's really popular now. I think they have like close to maybe 50 to 100,000 users now. So super smart guy, lives in the Atlanta area right now. And he even played for Team Great Britain in like some World Baseball Classic qualifier not too long ago. So super cool guy. I wonder how they know each other.
Yeah, Johnny Gardner tries to keep tabs on anybody who's a millionaire or a future millionaire.
Now Ben,
He'll sell some alcohol to him.
Johnny worked with. You say Conrad's his first name? He worked with Conrad's mom.
Oh, really? Okay, nice. I've met her a few times. Not too familiar with her, but no, that's cool. I didn't know that. Nice.
That guy's about to make a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's a really smart idea. Bubba, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you think of it?
Yeah, I know. But shifting gears a little bit, Ben. It came out today, or I think it was earlier this morning, afternoon, that Kendall Rogers tweeted as far as the NCAA selection, narrowing it down to 20 regional or potential hosts, I guess you should say. But next Thursday, the 13th, or Friday, the 14th, is when those are expected to come out.
Yeah, and you guys better hope you host a regional, because I was looking at the numbers before coming on the podcast. 24-3 at home, 6-6 on the road. So it would be in the best interest of East Carolina to host that regional, don't you say?
That's the plan. We need to take care of business this weekend. I know. I think if we don't win the series, that could be slipping away. I don't know that to be fact, but it sure would make things a lot more comfortable if we could take 3 out of 4 this weekend.
Yeah, and I think so. We talked about it on my podcast yesterday that we released today. This series, I don't know if it's going to be as competitive as people might think. Like, obviously, Tulane has had a really good stretch, and they've even beat Mississippi State on the road. But besides, Braden is going to throw, I'm assuming, tomorrow at noon, Friday at noon. I don't know if Tulane has been like beating teams up to par like East Carolina. Like, I know East Carolina's kind of, I would say, struggled. They've split the last 2 series, right? But East Carolina's got to feel good being at home, the talent they have, the pitching staff that they have, and obviously the hitters as well. But Tulane, I think, might be just like kind of getting that Texas Longhorn treatment right now, in the fact where they won like 13 in a row or 10 in a row, whatever it was. And then they go play a team like Texas Tech, and Texas Tech kind of takes care of business 2 out of 3 pretty easily. So I actually, in our little weekend pick'em challenge we do, I picked a push, but that's probably good news for you guys because I'm the ultimate jinx. I'm not very good at picking series, but I expect East Carolina to take care of business and win 3 out of 4 at home, kind of defend the park. And I mean, they know how big the series is to them, like hosting, especially with that deadline coming up next Thursday. I expect Godwin to have the boys ready and take care of business.
Bubba, do we have an update on Wisenhunt? Speaking of the series and trying to win 3 out of 4.
Last I heard, when we talked to Cliff on Tuesday, later on that afternoon, I guess it was, Carson threw a bullpen. I have not heard the results, how he's feeling since that. But depending on the results, how he felt the last couple days, he was going to be in order for a relief outing on Sunday. So fingers crossed that COVID freshman lefty who had pitched very well this year, even though he had a rough patch or two there before he had to get shut down, I guess about 3 weeks ago now. But hopefully he'll be able to get back out on the mound and see 2 or 3 innings or something on Sunday.
What's been going on with Jake Kuchmaner this year? I was looking at his numbers, and they're nowhere near where I thought they would be. In fact, I thought he was playing pro ball, to be honest with you. I thought he was in pro ball this year, and I looked, and I was like, wow, I haven't seen anything from him this year. Obviously, we saw that perfect game he threw back in 2019, and we got a chance to interview him on the podcast the day after he threw that perfect game. Super great guy, really fun to be around. What is it like a command issue, or is he just like not throwing as well? Like,
I think it's a combination of things. Coach Godwin has said that his, he's so big into the mental side of things that I think that he's maybe being a little too analytical.
Yeah.
But at the same time, his fastball command, he hasn't walked a ton by any means, but his fastball command within the zone hasn't been what it has been in the past. And obviously, he doesn't have quite the margin for error that a Carson Wisenhunt has, where, he's pitching 93, 94, and consistently in the low to maybe even mid-90s. Cooch is going to be more like a Greg Maddux type, 85 to 88, probably something like that.
Now, those two guys, I think, are the key for the Pirates to get to Omaha this year. Like, obviously, Wisenhunt's been hurt, right? Like, he's it was a
yes, and he had everything that all the tests that have been done came back negative. So we're hoping that he's able to get back out there on Sunday.
Yeah, but those two lefties, I think, are the big keys, because if Kuchmaner throws away he did like in the beginning of 2019, like that adds another arm to that rotation who can throw in a regional, probably like a game 3 or 4 kind of guy. And then you're going to need him, making a run in the super regional as well, whether he's coming in to eat up some innings out of the bullpen or whatever. But no, I think Kuchmaner, like, he'll get back to normal, I would assume. He's a gamer, maybe going through a little mental stretch right now. But from what I saw him pitch in 2019, like, that kid knows how to command, the edges of the plate. Like, can't live down the middle like it sounds like he's been doing this year. But again, I haven't seen him pitch this year. I was surprised to see him still on the team, but
yeah, it's a matter of, it's a mental thing. But I'll tell you, guys that like Garrett Saylor, Carter Spivey, there's guys that like that unfortunately, I don't think with Carter Spivey's performance last week, Coach said that I think those are the guys like long relievers, really step up. Wisenhunt is obvious, and Cooch is obvious, but the middle relievers are the ones that really, really, really going to have to step it up to a even bigger level than they. From Spivey, I know he had an issue with a blister, but that's been long gone. Garrett Saylor's had some good performances overall, but so there's a couple guys right there that you really, really, when you're looking at the regional, and when it gets even harder with the super regionals, the guys like that at the bullpen are going to be really, really huge for us.
Right. And so have you guys this is something I wanted to bring up on the podcast too, just because I'm talking with you, but do you guys think that Gavin Williams has been kind of not disrespected this year, but like really flown under the radar as far as like how good he's been all year? I was shocked to see his numbers just because like I haven't heard too much about him, but I wrote it down. His 70 strikeouts in 43 innings. Like, that is nothing to blink an eye at. Like, oh my God, like that is incredible numbers there. Like, do you guys think that like he doesn't get like the national media attention for a reason, or like?
Go ahead, Bubba.
I think part of it, Ben, is kind of what we're going to see tomorrow. Pitching at noon. I think that may have something to do with it. And this is the first year that he's really been in the weekend rotation.
Yep.
Last year, he was it wasn't an arm issue, excuse me, but he had hurt a finger in a rundown drill of all things, and then so he was right on the verge of getting back into the rotation against Columbia when things got shut down. So I think it's the combination of things with him not pitching in primetime on a Friday night, and probably the bigger thing with him being, even though he's on folks' radar, this is just his first time doing it on the weekend.
Yeah, makes sense.
No question about it. You guys want to let's talk some other leagues, if you will, Ben, while we have you on. Obviously, get your thoughts on. I guess we could start close to home for us, the ACC. What are your thoughts there with the Atlantic Coast Conference?
It's been a mess this year, guys. It has been a mess to keep up with. Like the emotional roller coasters that most of those teams have put us on for the podcast this year have been crazy. And it's I don't want to say the worst part, but the funniest part about it is like Notre Dame has nothing but consistent all year. And here I am every week just doubting them. Like, oh, they're going to slip up this week. They're going to lose this series. And sure enough, they've won every single ACC series. But I mean, you just have like a pack of teams like right there, like just a threshold below Notre Dame. And we thought Louisville would be able to compete with Notre Dame the whole season and win the ACC. But, now they're looking at like 4 games back in the standings. And you have teams like Florida State, NC State, who are finally playing better baseball. And then Pitt is leading the Coastal Division. And I always get the divisions mixed up. It might be the Atlantic. I don't know. But, I got Pitt and Virginia Tech like surprising a lot of people. Meanwhile, like North Carolina and Miami have been inconsistent. I mean, and Georgia Tech's another team that's been very inconsistent. So, like, if you put them, like, talent-wise, like, up against any other conference, I think that they would be better than pretty much every other conference. But it's just been such a like, roller coaster, really. Like, you don't know what each team is going to play like until they start the game. And so predictions for the ACC, I'm out. I have no idea. I mean, Notre Dame's been the most consistent. I think they're going to get 7, maybe 8 teams in the tournament. And we'll see how good the ACC really is compared to the other conferences. If they're really all that good, or maybe they're not that good at all. We'll find out, just because the non-conference this year has been kind of weird.
And before we talk more about the ACC and some other conferences, Barbecue Pirate chimes in and says, can't forget about Cam Colemore's performance on this past Sunday. Definitely not. The Pirates were trailing 11-3 by 8 runs. That's what I was trying to say in the fourth inning. And when that took place, Cam Colmore came in and gave the Pirate Bats a chance to get back in it. And ECU was able to bring the tying run to the plate in the 8th and 9th innings, just unable to deliver.
Yeah, no, I saw that. And that was actually one of the names I wrote down on my paper when I was doing some pre-show notes. I don't know too much about him, but he had some guts in that game on Sunday. That was for sure. That was a good performance there.
He's a local kid. Local kid, 6-year guy.
Okay, nice. 6-year guy. You got to love it. You got to love that saying in college baseball.
Yeah, we have an interesting thing. We have Tyler Smith, you have Cam Colmore, and Matt Bridges. All those guys have been there a long, long time. Going only back, what guys? The 2016, right?
I think Matt Bridges played under Keith LeClair.
Forever.
Yeah, you were correct though, Dave. 2016 was Matt Bridges, because you think about what he did down in Lubbock, closing out, getting the save in Game 1 of that Super Regional.
Yeah, it was all the way back to the first Super Regional. That's what's been amazing about Coach Godwin, is he has 2 Super Regionals. And I think a lot of our fans take it for granted. It's not easy to get to a Super Regional. And he has 2 of them in a short period of time, and all the wins and all the conference, a couple conference championships, and how many regionals? I think it's 3 or 4 regionals in a row here. 18, 19. Well, we didn't have last year, but it would be 3 out of the last 4 years.
He's been to a regional. He's been to a regional every year he's been here, except 2017. Correct?
Yep, that's correct. So it's Well, last year we didn't have a
nobody was original last year.
I know. I was just saying that we didn't have it there, but anyway, it's been a nice ride for him. What about the Big 12? I know that's a Big 12 has been one that everybody's been talking about preseason, and now what do you think?
I mean, it's going to come down to this weekend. I'll tell you that. Texas plays at TCU. The last time we saw those two teams play, I believe, was in 2019 when Cody Clemens hits like a walk-off home run. I saw that on Twitter here today, and it brought back some good memories. But TCU has like a 2-game lead right now, and they play 3 at home. And if they can win 2 out of 3 against Texas, they'll pretty much, with the rest of the schedule they have, they'll pretty much clinch the Big 12. Now, if Texas comes in and wins 2 out of 3, cuts it to a 1-game separation, and hold the tiebreaker, that's where it'll get interesting. So, and then if Texas sweeps, of course, then boom, they're controlling their own destiny there. So it's going to come down just to those two teams. Texas Tech has kind of played consistent, but still inconsistent. That they lost 2 out of 3 to Kansas State early in the season, which kind of took them out of contention. But between Texas and Texas Tech, they're both going to host between Texas and TCU, they're both going to host. TCU is kind of on that bubble right now where it looks like they will, but they still have to finish up pretty strong. And then you got teams like Oklahoma State and Baylor, who I believe will both get into the tournament. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, I think between Kansas State, Kansas, Oklahoma, and the last team I'm forgetting, I'm blanking out on them. West Virginia. There we go. Yeah, those teams aren't getting in the tournament this year unless they somehow win the Big 12 tournament.
Oh. And of course,
bringing it back closer to home, you guys obviously spent a lot of time talking about the SEC. Out of 14 teams, what do you think they get 10 or 11?
See, that's the tough thing. LSU's on the bubble right now. Georgia's on the bubble. Kentucky's on the bubble. Even Alabama is on the bubble. But I believe like 3 of those 5 teams will get in, which I believe will make it 9.
LSU definitely has a lot of work to do because they're 7-14 in the league.
7-14, but if I looked at their schedule last night, I know it gets a lot easier. Like they play 3 at Auburn, and I think they play 3 at Texas A&M, and then they play 3 against Alabama, I want to say. So like the 9 games left, and they have Louisiana Tech midweek, I remember. So they have 10 games left. If they go 8-2, 7-3 in that 10-game span, and then win a game or 2 in the SEC tournament, it's going to take. I mean, it's going to take a miracle for the committee not to put them in, just because of the tradition and their fan base that they bring and things like that.
Yeah, if they get to 2-3 games within 500, like you're saying, because they're 27-17 overall.
Yeah, which is fine. Like that's really good, right? They just play in the hardest conference in America.
No doubt. What about? I know the 2 conferences everybody loves you so much, with Conference USA and of course with the Sun Belt. What do you think about those leagues?
Look, I love those leagues, and I'm a big fan. I was a Conference USA guy before anything growing up. I went to probably 5 Rice baseball games a year from the age of like 6 to 17. So I was a big Rice baseball fan. Obviously, they weren't in the Conference USA for most of that. I think they were in the WAC for a while, but I'm disappointed in Rice. I'm just going to leave it at that. That's a whole nother rant I can go on.
Jeez.
That baseball program has gone straight down the toilet since Wayne Graham left, or got forced out. But Conference USA, really good top of the conference between Louisiana Tech, Southern Miss, Charlotte, and Old Dominion, both really good teams this year. Those are the 4 that are going to get in. I believe Louisiana Tech and Charlotte have a legitimate chance to possibly host this year, which is really cool. Like I love watching the mid-major teams, or I say mid-major, love watching that Conference USA level teams get to host a regional, just because I saw Rice do it so many times growing up. Because they both have nice ballparks and pretty good fan bases there. Now the Sun Belt has kind of been a disaster, because you look at it like Coastal Carolina, who is supposed to be ranked all season, like sitting I think in like last place or second to last place in the Sun Belt. And then meanwhile, you got like South Alabama, who's really good. Georgia Southern's really good. Louisiana Lafayette's pretty solid. But there really hasn't been a team that separates themselves in that conference. So it's been a down year for them. I mean, I think it's safe to say it's been a down year in the Sun Belt.
Isn't guys, and maybe this is the bad time to ask this question, I should know. Isn't Coastal's legendary coach sick, or
I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but that sounds familiar.
And that's Gary Gilmore that you're talking about, Kyle. And yes, he was battling. I'm trying to remember exactly. I don't want to speculate, but I believe he was battling cancer of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that could explain their woes.
Yeah, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Coastal Carolina puts it together for the Sun Belt tournament as like a 10 seed and wins the whole thing. I mean, they did it, I think, in 2019 when they were hosting the region or the conference tournament. I think they were like a 5 or 6 seed and ended up winning the whole thing. So, yeah, they're just super talented. They just haven't put it together yet.
What about Pac-12?
Pac-12, that's another conference that is a mystery. Arizona and Stanford, they're playing this weekend, battle of first place. Arizona's played way more conference games, if I remember that correctly, but Stanford's pretty solid. I mean, it's the same kind of Stanford roster. If you guys kept up with college baseball, like in the mid to early 2000s, like very consistent. They have the pitching, a couple guys that hit for power, but for the most part, like spray the ball to all fields, can run the base as well. And Arizona is just a slugfest team, like using gorilla bats. And I mean, they've put up double-digit runs, and I think 55 or 60% of the games played this year, which is super impressive. And other than that, I mean, you have UCLA, who is preseason ranked number 2 across pretty much every college baseball like outlet or platform. They're finally starting to put it together. They struggled early in the year. Who else is in there? Oh, Oregon State's really good. Oregon has had a really surprising season. And then Arizona State's another team that's kind of lurking. There's like 7 teams, or either 6 or 7 teams within 3 games of first place in that conference. So, I mean, and they still have, I think, 4 weekends left because the Pac-12 isn't playing a Pac-12 tournament. They're just playing straight regular season. So they still have 12 conference games left. So anything could happen there.
Hey, bringing it back closer to home, a guy that we're familiar with because he is an assistant at North Carolina as well as UNC Wilmington for years and years, and that's Scott Jackson, the job that he's done up at Liberty, who has an excellent ballpark. They're no stranger to making the NCAA tournament, but I think there's something like 30-10 or 31-11, and they really scheduled well in the non-conference. They were swept at TCU, but then they went down and swept a very talented UCF team, although an inconsistent UCF team. So just talk about Scott Jackson's ball club and some others like that. Let's talk about Fairfield, 28-1 or 29-1. What a story they've been, and then also Northeastern that's undefeated in the CAA.
Yeah, so we'll start with Liberty because the 11.7 podcast is huge fans of the Flames. They have had a great schedule, great non-conference schedule. They've beaten a lot of ACC teams. They've played a lot of ACC games in the midweek. They did get swept against TCU, which is, like, now looking back at it, like, not bad. I mean, it's always bad to get swept, but not that bad. But Liberty, the worst part about Liberty is that they're in that tier of really good team where they're going to hurt themselves if they're a 2 seed. And I say that because if they're going to be a 2 seed this year, they're going to be forced to be matched with an SEC host, whether it's Vanderbilt or Mississippi State, Florida, Ole Miss, potentially Arkansas, because they've played so many ACC games, and they're not going to stick them in as a 2 seed in like an East Carolina regional. So the committee is going to put them pretty much to fail, and not to fail necessarily, but like they're going to be put in a tough position to be a 2 seed in an SEC regional, just because there's not very many like 2 seeds outside of the SEC or ACC. And so that's the worst part, just because it's like you can just see the finish line for Liberty, being a 2 seed in a very tough regional. But if they like somehow fell to a 3 seed, then like they could be put in a regional, like maybe like a Notre Dame or a Big Ten regional host. Like they could be either a really good 3 seed or put in a 2 seed position to fail with like one of the powerhouse SEC teams. So, but they've had a great season. We've had them ranked in our top 25, not our mid-major top 20, but our actual top 25 for a few weeks now, just because of the resume out of conference that they've put together. And they play in a pretty weak Atlantic Sun conference, and so they've been rolling all through that pretty simply. But it's going to break my heart on Selection Monday when Liberty goes to like Vanderbilt as a 2 seed. I'm going to be pretty upset, but that's what it looks like is going to happen there. And then teams like Fairfield, Fairfield could have went undefeated this year and still been a 4 seed, which is the sad thing. But they ended up this past weekend, lost a tough one. But, I mean, they're pretty much a lock to win that conference. They're way better than everybody else. Some other teams that have kind of shown – I'm trying to think now. Oh, like Dallas Baptist is a team that is hitting the stride at the right time. Coming down the closing stretch of the season, they're playing great baseball. You've seen the postseason success that they've had in the past. Really good program there that's starting to get some really good Texas recruits. And that's another team to keep an eye out in the regionals. I think they've been to one super regional in the last 5 years, but they're kind of looking to get over that hump to get to Omaha as well. So.
And then you referenced earlier, we talked about Charlotte, Old Dominion, some of those Conference USA teams, but you also mentioned the likes of UC Irvine and also Santa Barbara.
Yeah, UC Irvine and Santa Barbara play this weekend, which is going to be great because there's nothing better than Friday and Saturday night when it's 10 p.m. Eastern time and you can go and watch. And I believe some of these games are going to be on ESPNU, not even ESPN Plus, but a couple are going to be on ESPNU. So 10 p.m., turn on some college baseball. It's going to be daylight over there. Get to see the California kids play the baseball a different way than what we're used to kind of on the East Coast. A lot of hit and runs, bunting, good pitching performances. Kind of helps speed the game up. But then Sunday, games start at 4 p.m. over there. And after that first slate of day games, kind of like in the NFL, you watch the noon games and the 1 o'clock games, and then you get a couple 4 o'clock games, which are nice to watch while prepping for our podcast. So I'm really interested in that series just because I'm not bought in yet on either one of those teams to make big noise in the postseason. They're both going to be there, but I want to see how they match up head to head and which one of those two teams can make big noise in the postseason. Go into a regional at Oregon State or go into a regional at Arizona and take win the regional, get to a super regional.
No doubt, it's going to be a great down the stretch. It'll be fun to see about the sites like we're talking about. Coming up next week, we'll hear those 20 names, which regionals, and then it'll be narrowed down later on. Ben, how can people find your work as far as the podcast? We know 11.7. Like I said, hopefully at some point we change the name of the podcast. But for right now, where can people find the 11.7 podcast?
Yeah, so I always just tell people to follow us on Twitter. That's where we put in the most work. Me and Dimitri, we do a lot of work on Twitter as far as just getting exposure to the school's accounts, posting viral moments. And then we also post our links to our podcast. So we're doing podcasts 2 to 3 times a week, depending on how busy our schedules are. But every day on Twitter, we're doing something to just try to, grow the game and grow the popularity of college baseball, which we've seen a huge step forward this year across social media. People are loving college baseball with the bat flips and the celebrations and just the energy that these teams provide. It's great to see finally college baseball getting national exposure across ESPN and Barstool Sports and Fox Sports. It's really cool to see everybody on social media kind of see what this game's all about, just because there's great fan bases, great players, and these are the guys that are going to be playing in the major leagues moving forward. I was looking at some stats that I think it was 55% of Major League Baseball players played at the Division I level. So that's a cool stat to see.
No doubt, and I think Bubba Rosenbaum said he'll get you the birdhouse this weekend, and we'll mail it to you. The postage shouldn't be too bad on the birdhouse for sure.
No, I love it.
No doubt, man. And we'll definitely get you a T-shirt of ours when we have that for you here very soon. We'll send you one. Ben, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it. Good luck on the podcast. We love it. And don't be a stranger. Love to have you back on soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't remember who I was texting, which one of you, but do you have my number? It was Bubba. Bubba, share my number with Dave and Kyle here. That's the best way to reach me. I don't know what's going on with my Twitter with DM stuff. I won't get notifications on the DMs, but please text me. I'd love to come back on, especially if you guys are hosting a regional. We can really hype up that regional for you.
Sounds good. Will do.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, good night. All right. Take care, buddy. Appreciate you. All right. Ben Upton, 11.7 podcast. I know Kyle, before we go, I know you wanted to, you had something on your mind.
Yeah, I had a couple things on my mind as we sit here now at just about 9:30. But yeah, look, this is just a couple things, and I'm going to try to keep it short, but just some observations here. First thing, got news today. Coastal Carolina is building an indoor practice facility for football. We want to have it ready by the end of 2022. I believe the facility was 15 million, 13 million,
15.
$15 million. So, Coastal Carolina is going to get that done by the end of 2022. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, we're making no progress on paying off what we have here. I don't know what can be done about that, but when you got Coastal, they just expanded their stadium, and now they're building an indoor practice facility, something we hadn't got. That's recruiting advantages. I mean, they already can take non-qualifiers and we can't. We're in a more high-profile conference, but little things like that, we've got to catch up. We're getting further and further behind on things like that, and there's no good reason for it. And then this is just, as I expand upon that, Ron Robinson, and this is nothing against Ryan, but Ryan's been the acting executive director of the Pirate Club now for a while, and that's not his role. We need to, when are we going to get an official? Is the executive director of the Pirate Club? When is that going to happen? The Pirate Club is sitting there dormant. There's not an original outside of the box thought that comes out of the Pirate Club. We're not growing the Pirate Club. There's no interesting. I got a whole idea of promotional stuff to do for the Pirate Club, a whole subscription-based Netflix type thing to do for the Pirate Club. That I'll talk about later. We're getting late in the show for me to go into details about that. But when we're doing things like, let's say Mr. Jones, right now as we're losing season ticket holders, as we're losing Pirate Club members, let's say Mr. Jones, had something that was bothering him, and he decided to allocate all his money. He was angry about something, and Mr. Jones, when he made his Pirate Club donation this year, he said he wanted 100% of it to go to basketball for whatever reason. And he said 100% of that donation needs to go to basketball because I'm mad about XYZ. And then he's not going to buy football tickets. He's not going to get a football pass. But then he decides, hey, I'm going to get football tickets. And he's told you can't park in your parking spot that you've had for up to many years. You've been a loyal Pirate Club member. You've been given money, but since you didn't make it to the general scholarship fund, you said specifically for it to go to basketball or soccer, baseball, whatever, you can't have your parking spot. You can get season tickets, but you can't have you got to give us more money for you to get your parking spot, or you're going to have to go park in the belt lot. Now, why are you bickering with a loyal pirate who's been a Pirate Club member for years and years and years, instead of giving them their damn spot? They gave you money. If you ain't got enough sense to take that money, allocate it to scholarships in that sport he requested, then take money from other places to make up the difference. Because now, if he said for that money to all go to basketball, well, great, it went to fund basketball scholarships. That's money you can take from somewhere else now and put to other sports because he's taking care of some basketball scholarships for you. So give him his parking spot. You don't ask him to donate more money to get his parking spot. That's insulting. If you want to do anything, say, Mr. Jones, you've been a loyal pirate for many years, and we need your season ticket money, and we're going to give you your parking spot. But here's what I want you to do for me, Mr. Jones. At the end of this football season, if you're happy with the product on that field, I want you to promise me that you'll give more money to the Pirate Club at the end of the year. We're going to do this for you. We're giving you your parking spot back. But you go ahead and if you're happy with that product on the field, we'll give you your parking spot now. You give us a little money at the end of the year. Now's not the time to be pushing anybody away. You need to be bringing people in. And if we don't get creative and we don't get, I don't know if forceful is the right word, but creative
Urgency.
and aggressive.
Urgency.
A sense of urgency, yes. The debt's going to get deeper and deeper. We're going to get left behind as we sit here and twiddle our thumbs and wait for things to happen. Buddy, at East Carolina, you don't wait for things to happen. You make things happen. And if you don't make things happen here, you're going to get left behind. You can't sit and wait. And it's just, I hate to see it. I liked the letter from the hell from Gilbert. I liked some of it. This the one that he just released. I love that he's pushing the payment plan, but by the very fact, Dave, that you're having to push the payment plan acknowledges the fact that we don't have a bunch of rich donors. We have a handful of rich donors. So
Right.
you better be doing something to reach out to the mid-level and lower-level donors and growing that. But I love the fact that we're pushing the payment plan. I think we should expand the fan zone, the $99 seats, because they're not getting sold anyway. The upper deck's halfway empty. So
Nope.
let's expand the fan zone for now. And let's sell some damn tickets, even if it's at $99. When they're in the stadium, they're spending money. They got to buy drinks and snacks, etc. But anyway, I just wanted to touch on a couple things and ran over.
Yeah, that's all right. Mr. Jones has been, by the way, people that are happy to listen. I know we have Pirate Club workers at staff that listen. So it's a Pirate Club member. I will just tell you this, guys, over 40 years.
Yep.
That you're going to lose. You're going to lose. We can't afford to lose the friendlies, the people like the guys on this podcast, and other folks that watch and listen to this podcast. We're clinging on for dear life for those folks. And I'll tell you this: I say it all the time when we started this podcast, but we've been doing this podcast for over 3 years, and we still don't have a master plan that's released. And one of the number one thing on the master plan is literally the indoor practice facility. We've got to have it. It's not as Dave Hart said, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. So if it's $20 million, just put out there this 20. If it's 15 million, put out there it's $15 million. And guess what? People will start raising
if Coastal
money.
can do it for 15, and the cost of construction in the Myrtle Beach area is a lot higher than it is in the Greenville area. So if Coastal can do it for 15, we can do it for 10.
Well, whatever the case may be. Yeah, whatever the case may be, the fact is we need one. If you want to keep Mike Houston and you want to keep Godwin, I don't know what's going on with Dooley. That's a whole nother show.
Yeah, when is that going to be addressed? When is that going to be addressed? Why hasn't? And maybe there's nothing to address. And if that's the issue, you people are talking about it. You hear it online. Then release a statement addressing that there's nothing to address. That the basketball program is fine. But when is that going to be addressed? If he's leaving,
June 1st.
Yeah, well, if we sit around, if our administration sits around and waits for his buyout to go to $400,000 and lets him walk rather than getting more money out of it, then and I'm not saying that's the case, but if it's the case, that's criminal.
Yeah, well, until I see this different, that's one of my biggest fears right now for our program.
Well, I hope to God that that's not the case. I hope Dooley wouldn't do that to our basketball program. More so than that, I would hope our administration wouldn't let that happen. If he's going to go, then he needs to go now, and we need to get as much as we can out of the buyout.
Hey, some good news on that front. Our commitment, longtime commitment from down in Florida, I believe it's Jaquan Scott. I think I got that name correct. And then also Javon Small. Scott has signed, even though it has not been announced by the university. And then also Small got word earlier tonight that he will be signing here, I think, in the next couple or few days. So that's good news, pointing to hopefully Coach Dooley and staff returning.
Yeah, no, that is definitely good news. And like I said, maybe there is no news to report. Maybe that's why it hasn't been addressed. There's nothing to address. And if that's the case, then that's fantastic. And we can retract those statements, but everything else stands true.
All right, guys. Do you have anything before we go? Had a great show tonight, and two great guests, and certainly with by the way, Sunday night, don't forget about extra innings. So hopefully we can present it by Next Level Training Center. Hopefully we can have a great show talking about the Pirates winning the series and moving back into first place. We'll see how that turns out. And I know that, Bubba, that's first game is going to be tomorrow. Is that at 11 a.m.?
It's actually at 12 noon. It was 1 o'clock, but now it's 12 noon. So definitely unbelievable pitching matchup between Gavin Williams and Braden Olthoff of Tulane. Will likely be a premium on runs. Should be a tremendous game, a tremendous series. And then on Sunday, like Dave just mentioned, Corey Glore will join us, maybe Trent Britt or some other guests as well. But certainly Corey will be back with us after he took a week off last week on his way home from Wichita State.
All right, and we'll have our PGX pitcher of the game and our PGX player of the game, the week, I should say. And I appreciate Mark Metakazi for all that he does for our show. And those batting gloves, my kids love them. I was at my daughter's scrimmage tonight for softball, and she had her gloves in her bag there. PGX Gloves has everything: the custom baseball gloves, batting gloves. I know, Kyle, you always love talking about our golfers like Terry Gallagher.
Yeah, a lot of golfers out there as we're in the month of May, and go get you some custom golf gloves, guys. Look sharp as you're out there on the golf course, chasing a little white ball around with your custom gloves from PGX Gloves, and don't forget about the swag.
No doubt. Hey, Johnny Robertson, thank you very much. You said great show tonight. I really enjoyed everyone's contributions. Thank you, Johnny. We appreciate it. It's nice to have another Johnny. We have Johnny Gardner and Johnny Robertson. So, Johnny, thank you
Johnny
so much.
all the time.
That's right. Johnny at nighttime, not in the morning. All right. Until next time, until Sunday nights for extra innings. You'll be able to hear that Sunday night. You've been watching and listening to The Sports Objective. Good night, everybody. Go Pirates.
Surrounded, put your crossbones up and lean side to side. Set the tone with your pirate pride. Put your crossbones up for your pirates. Ain't no business on the water.